Hello again and welcome everyone to Teach Me to Sports Bet. We are in the final week of the NFL. Playoffs start after this week's game, so we have a lot to talk about. As always, I have no idea what I'm doing, so I brought on my friend, my colleague, and veteran sportscaster, Dave Bontempo. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Kimmy, great to see you again. What a time.
What a time. It's crazy. It's the new year. Everybody's looking forward to kicking 2020 to the curb. I am on board with that. And looking forward to the playoffs in a new way for a change.
Yeah, it's really going to be interesting this year as we approach week 17, in that this is one of the most realistic and meaningful week 17s in many years in the NFL because they added a playoff spot. So there are a lot of teams that are in the running for a spot that weren't before. And what that does is it creates a nice little handicapping quagmire. A little fun to end the season for you.
So it's going to be a busy week. All of week 17 games are on Sunday, I saw, which I find it's going to be a very busy day.
Yes, so the Monday night game is out. Yeah, that Saturday schedule we had is out. And what we are doing, people, really important to take note of this, the league wanted to keep you interested in all of the games. So a couple games changed their time. The Green Bay Packers game against the Chicago Bears has been moved from an early game to a late game. And the New Orleans Saints against the Carolina Panthers has been moved to a late game as well. They wanted those games to line up with the Seattle Seahawks game because of playoff implications. And that's good for bettors, too, because now every game matters. If they're staggered, some games won't count and they won't matter. But these will all be important. So people looking in on this, we have some big schedule changes this week.
So I have a confession to make. I did not bet this week. With family and the holiday and cooking and time off, I just was a fan of football. We turn it on for a bit and then we do other things. And I'm sort of glad I didn't because it was not a week. I don't know that I would have been very happy.
I do not know a single soul who cashed in last week with those underdogs, being that the New York Jets and the Cincinnati Bengals won, large underdogs on the spread, and so many different things that came up with a lot of teams. So, you know what? If you don't feel it, don't force it. That's a good lesson for that weekend. If you don't love something, there's no need to play it. You'll love something else soon.
I didn't even really look. I think that's why I didn't bet, is I didn't want to just bet haphazardly. The only game where I had a feeling, but I didn't trust it, was we had talked a lot about the playoff implications for not only the Washington football team, but for other teams based upon whether they won or not. And I didn't think they were going to win, but they had so much at stake that I thought they might, but I didn't think they would, and I wasn't confident enough to pull the trigger, which I should have been.
Well, that just goes to show that is the worst effort I have ever seen the Washington football team by a team trying to win a division at home, even though there are no fans, the way they played against the Carolina Panthers. And for people paying attention for this week's games, Dwayne Haskins, the quarterback for the Washington football team on Sunday, has been released from the team. So They now have a total backup quarterback situation, disciplinary problems with him, plus he played very poorly. So you may see Alex Smith in the lineup. But before we get to that, I think what you just said leads me into a story that we have to tell about the underdogs because it was just too good. It was a couple weeks ago. We even talked last week when the New York Jets and the Cincinnati Bengals had both scored big upsets. Anybody who was talking afterwards like, well, I liked it, but I just didn't play it. We called it the Pinocchio parlay. Watch the guy's nose grow as he tells you he liked it. So I relayed that to our friend at DraftKings, Johnny Avello. And Johnny had a good laugh with it too. And Johnny, on Christmas Day, I get a text from Johnny. He says, look at this. Somebody at the Harris Book, brick and mortar in Las Vegas, had bet $200 on Cincinnati and the Jets to win those games. That produced $19,200 for that better.
Whoa.
So just when you think people are not crazy enough to do the crazy thing, yes, they are. Big underdog. So just when you think nobody will do that, they'll surprise you and make a big bet.
Well, somebody commented on our video last week and said, I was one of those crazy people too. I don't know if it was the $200 guy, but he said he actually bet on the Bengals and the Jets. And I wanted to call him crazy. And if he's watching,
On money line.
if he's watching, I don't really mean you're crazy, but you are sort of crazy. Okay, so we're going into week 17. A lot is at stake this week. And I can't imagine that there aren't a lot of things that are going into how we're going to pick teams this week. Like, teams are battered up, teams are tired, they've had reduced rest schedules because they're trying to fit in all these games. So what are we looking at as we go into week 17?
What we're seeing this week, this is one of the best week 17s because usually you have a handful of teams that have something to play for and most teams that don't. But that extra playoff spot brings so many things into play. Now, what's important this week is the injuries. They are very big, especially in the Los Angeles Rams and Arizona Cardinals game. Both teams have lost their starting quarterback for the week. So both quarterbacks are throwing their first pass in the NFL. Both of them. So it is a battle of the backups. And what's hard to handicap is you don't know how that player was in practice. That's really what's going to determine it and how well they can protect that quarterback with a running game. So you've got that. Maybe you shy off that game or you bet a little bit less. You also have a situation in which the Washington football team should have Alex Smith, their second-string quarterback, playing against the Philadelphia Eagles. But if he can't go, it will be their third-string quarterback playing with everything on the line their entire season. So what you look for with these players is you want to see if they can just dump off the pass to a halfback, keep the game plan simple, get rid of the ball quickly, not make mistakes. In these games, if you can get your quarterback not to make mistakes, that's the key. It's going to be decided by who loses some of these games rather than who wins them. So you have that to consider in those games. We also have playoff seeding. The Green Bay Packers have something to play for. They play at the Chicago Bears. Both teams need the game. So the Packers will get the number one seed all the way throughout the NFC if they win this game. So there's a lot on the line for them in that game. And, then we have to decide whether the Pittsburgh Steelers will go all out against the Cleveland Browns because they don't really have anything to play for. You have to measure that. Right now, the line is telling you they'll rest their players. Watch the lines on those games.
Well, it makes sense for them to rest their players, right? Because if they're not gaining anything from the game.
They're not gaining anything from the game. The other side of it is that their offense was sleepwalking for 3 weeks, and it finally woke up last week in a win over the Indianapolis Colts. Will they try to improve on that a little bit? But they do have to protect Ben Roethlisberger, their quarterback. So you may see a half of a game out of that, and then they'll be scoreboard watching. The Buffalo Bills look like the real deal right now as a serious challenger in the AFC, and they have to beat the Miami Dolphins to keep the number 2 seed, which is that's a second-round home game. So teams are playing for playoff positioning, and they'll play hard. A lot of teams will play hard this weekend.
Okay, so there's a lot at stake for a lot of teams. What are our games to watch? Like, what are the games that we should pay a little bit more attention to this week?
I think it's wherever you just get a feel for what teams you've been following all year and how they will do. Some nuggets of notes. The teams that are playing the best football right now in the NFC East is the Dallas Cowboys. They are playing at the New York Giants as a 2.5-point favorite, but they're 6-9. They have to win. Whoever loses that game is out. And then the Philadelphia Eagles and Washington football team will decide the division on Sunday night. So you could watch one game, then decide how you want to bet the night game, because that will be the last one on the schedule. There's a lot of tie breaks at stake in that. And there are some big ones. The teams that have the Baltimore Ravens are playing the Cincinnati Bengals. They win and they get in. They have to win. The Baltimore Ravens will probably play very strong and beat the Cincinnati Bengals. But if the line is so high, up over 10 points, you might want to take them in a money line parlay with something else, because where are you going to get a return on your investment? But they're playing very good football right now. So these are some of the games that have piqued the interest.
I will tell you, if I was starting a new football team, I would want to be in the league where the Eagles and the Washington football team are fighting for first place, because that's just craziness after their start of both of their seasons were just horrible.
Well, what we have in the NFC East, which was dubbed the NFC least, and I took it back, but this is the first time in recorded history that the NFC East champion will have started the season 2-7 or worse.
Oh my God!
The first time ever. Now, if the Dallas Cowboys happened to win it, they were 3-9.
Oh my gosh! That's just
but nobody could
crazy.
bury it. The Philadelphia Eagles were in first place much of the year. They're the first team out. They're gone. They have nothing to play for. They are eliminated. So keep that in mind. The Eagles have nothing to play for, and yet they opened up as a favorite against Washington, which has everything to play for. That's changed. Washington is a slight favorite as we speak, but they don't know what to do with the NFC East. So a hunch and angle. I like to say who's playing the best football right now, and that's changed. Right now, that's been Dallas, and they're the only team playing good football in the NFC East, but they need help. So one of the many angles that are playing into it.
Yikes. It looks like it's going to be a really eventful weekend.
I think you'll see a surprise or two. You'll see the teams that have to play will come up with their best effort. And it is the NFL. Teams will probably play better than most experts think that they might. I mean, you just look at the Jets and the Bengals over the last 2 weeks at the bottom of the heap, and they both won for 2 weeks in a row. The NFL is a great product. So I think you'll see an entertaining brand of football. And, the teams that need it, you have to get in your gut. If one team is fairly better than the other one and have to have the game, they're coming to play, and they're going to put everything out there.
Last week we talked about how the Saturday games, every team on the Saturday games, there were playoff implications. So there was a team, a favorite, and they had a playoff implication. And I asked you which one was likely to be upset. And you said, there's too much on the line. I think, the favorites will do what they need to do. And they didn't. So now I was going to say, you're going to say something.
Oh, yeah. Well, I recall, depending on where we talked about it, I thought the Miami Dolphins were the most vulnerable of the teams. And they should have lost. They should have. I mean, they did. They won, but they should have lost because the Raiders took the lead with 19 seconds to go and still lost. But the Raiders did cover. For anybody who played the game, the Raiders did cover that game. The surprise was how badly the Arizona Cardinals played against the San Francisco 49ers. And there was just a lack of sync between Kyler Murray and the rest of the offense, probably because the game wasn't nationally televised. Because it wasn't nationally televised, you had no feel for the game as you went in. They laid a big egg against They laid a big egg against a team they had beaten in the first week of the year. They beat that team in week 1. So that was a surprise.
Well, I will. It's infuriating because this is not surprise for the Cardinals. We do this, it seems like every single year we're in this position. And then we just blow it up. Well, I say we like I'm on the team or something, but you know what I mean. I'm a fan. I get to say we.
After they beat the Giants, handily, and then after they beat the Eagles at home, San Francisco was a team that had nothing to play for, so you're figuring that they will play well, and they just did not put it together. So, and San Francisco rose up a little bit. It shows that if you don't bring your A game, a team can knock you off. And that's terrible for Arizona because they would have been in a great position this weekend against the Rams. Now they have to win this game with with a quarterback that hasn't played. Yeah, I can understand.
It's frustrating. The other thing, I think I learned a valuable lesson this past weekend, even though I didn't bet. The lesson I learned was, in the end, these players are competitors. And if you're a competitor, you want to win. Even if you're not playing for a playoff spot, you still want to win. You still want to get your touchdowns. You still want to have a good performance. That's what a true competitor does.
Yeah, and you're being evaluated. So even if your team is out of it, your head coach is watching every team, every play you have. If they don't like what they see in you, someone else is waiting to play in the NFL.
Yeah.
So you will show up. Now, when we make the discussion about teams need it and they'll play more, is that they are supposed to kick up their game a level or two above and play with the hunger, the desperation, and the urgency that you would expect them to. And the Cardinals just did not. And the Miami Dolphins, by the way, if you're following them, they made a good decision in the middle of the last game against the Raiders. They brought Ryan Fitzpatrick in to run the offense.
Yep.
And they did much better. Tua Tagovailoa is not a crunch time quarterback at this stage of his career. I expect that the Dolphins will use Fitzpatrick going forward, and they should.
I thought that was an interesting switch there. I didn't really know what to make of it, though, so I'm glad you brought it up. I'm glad I noticed it.
Yes. That's a situation where they spent all this money on the draft pick, so they were kind of hell-bent on getting him into the lineup, but he wasn't ready. They were always better with Fitzpatrick, and they were winning because of their good defense. Mm-hmm. But this time, Fitzpatrick bailed them out.
Okay, Dave, so a lot at stake this weekend, a lot of to keep your eyes on. Will we expect, it's early in the week, are we going to see any roster changes or anything because of the injuries and people being beat up? Are there anything we're still keeping an eye on?
We're keeping an eye on watching the analysis of who's the better quarterback in the Rams and Arizona game, because they're both trying it for the first time. With Daniel Jones of the Giants, there's going to be a lot of discussion about why is he playing, why isn't the backup playing. So they will all revolve, primarily around the quarterbacks being the impact players. So, and watch the lines on some of these. Watch the Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Steelers line, which was a touchdown when we came on to talk. If that line goes down to about 4 points or 3 points, you'll know that the Steelers starters are going to be in that game. And I'm sure that some Steelers bettors took that line at 7, took the Steelers at 7, and then is hoping that the team plays, because then you'll get a big a big boost coming in. Yep. So watch those, and of course, follow your strategies that you've laid out, what you like, and then decide if you want the other parlays. And remember, you're playing with a lead, Kimmy.
Yes, I'd like to keep it that way.
I would like to toss in one more thing about handicapping and strategy, and it doesn't involve the NFL, but it happened at the same time. When you're playing other sports like the NBA, Last night, the Brooklyn Nets were supposed to beat the Memphis Grizzlies as people thought, but they benched their 2-star players to rest them because they were playing 2 nights in a row. So that changed the line, and the Nets did lose that game. So you might say, I'm a fan of a certain team, but with sports like hockey and the NBA, with more games, you have to watch that more star players get rested, and that impacts the games. It did this one. I'm just bringing it up because it happened yesterday.
Well, and that makes it's obviously more of a consideration and something we have to watch for now. If teams don't have anything at stake, that they already have their spot secured, they're going to be resting some of their stars, I would assume, because they really need them to be performing well when the games matter more during the playoffs.
Right. They do need to have them. So maybe they'll play for a half, but you have to worry about the injuries, especially to a quarterback. So, yeah, they're going to be walking that line. But with the NFL moving the times of the games, what you used to be able to do was say, okay, I'm 1 game behind you. I have to go past you. If you play the first game and you win, it's over. I won't start my players in the second game because it's been decided. But now that everybody's playing at the same time, you have to make your selection and go in. So
sneaky.
And it's worked both ways. The major thing that you have to do is be sharp coming out of it for the following week. And, because there's no bye week for a lot of teams.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but it is uncharted ground. This weekend is uncharted.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be busy. Okay, Dave. Well, I am going to let you go. I have my work cut out for me, I think, this weekend. But I'm up for the task. And we'll meet back here next week. And then it gets really fun.
It will be. We'll be talking playoffs, and we'll have some discussions on all of that. And just bet the games you want. Keep the focus on just the games you want, and you will be fine.
You got it. Okay, Dave, well, take care. I will see you after the calendar year changes over to 2021. So Happy New Year to you and yours.
You too, Kimmy. Talk to you then.
Bye.